Racism is the discrimination and prejudice against a specific race and the dehumanization of them by a person or multiple people outside that race. Anti-racism is the practice of actively opposing racism and promoting racial equality. Racism and anti-racism are two issues that are constantly combating each other within San Francisco, but individuals and organizations like the Office of Racial Equity and St. Ignatius Parish located within the city are helping to push back on racism and promote anti-racism instead, so we can replace the negative impact of racism with something more positive. The Office of Racial Equity advocates for the liberation of people of color, and St. Ignatius Parish wants to create a safe space for people of color in their parish and share their community. The following will explore the topic, anti-racism and racism within San Francisco, California. How to Be an Anti-Racist, written by Ibram X. Kendi, discusses how we all internally struggle to treat each other and ourselves equally. We need to work on changing our mindsets and getting rid of our racist beliefs and biases, instead of trying to change people of color to make them fit our standard of the quote-unquote perfect white human being. And this is also what St. Ignatius Parish wants to do in San Francisco. Kendi explicitly provides definitions, examples, and explanations for the topic. To learn how to become an anti-racist, we need to define what exactly racism and anti-racism are. If we don't define these topics, we'll struggle with remaining consistent in being anti-racist, and we may end up becoming simply not racist or slipping into the territory of being racist instead, which isn't the goal. Kendi even uses himself and his parents as an example, in which they all used to have racist and anti-black views when they were younger. But they took the time to educate themselves and then learn their racism. They didn't stop there either, and went on to learn how to become anti-racist and get involved in anti-racist activism and black culture. St. Ignatius Parish follows Kendi's guidelines on how to become an anti-racist, and one of the parish's main goals is to keep people informed and teach them how to be anti-racist. Here's a clip of Kendi being interviewed by CBS News on his book and his take on anti-racism, talking furthermore why it's important to be anti-racist and simply not racist.
Saying to the American people, you can't expect to end chattel slavery by doing nothing. The more you do nothing, the more slavery spreads and harms and tortures and kills. And in many ways, that's what's happening right now. If we don't actively seek to be anti-racist, then racism will persist.
Why is it not enough to not be a racist as opposed to being an anti-racist?
Well, I think it's important for people to know the opposite of being racist is being anti-racist.
Kendi has argued for being anti-racist in a series of best-selling books.
No one is inherently racist or anti-racist. It's about what we're doing. And so when we're expressing that the racial groups are equals, we're being anti-racist. When we're supporting a policy that is leading to a racial disparity, we're being racist. You know, I'm encouraging people to constantly think about what are we doing or even not doing.
Skin Tone and Mexicans' Perceptions of Discrimination in New Immigrant Destinations, written by Mauro, Okamoto, Garcia, Adam, and Trop, discusses how Latinos, especially Mexican immigrants living in America, experience racialization quite differently depending on the color of their skin. But the Office of Racial Equity exists to combat this exact type of racism on an educational level. Not only do the authors discuss racism, but they discuss something that's also a huge part of racism, colorism. When people talk about racism, they rarely bring up colorism, which usually plays a part when people act up on their racism. It's very evident in this article, as light-skinned Latinos and dark-skinned Latinos are treated significantly different, despite both being Latino. For example, a self-identified indigenous woman who migrated to the United States from Mexico named Lucia talked about how she is constantly followed around when shopping in Atlanta and always feels the need to be cautious in upper-class white spaces, while her friend, who's also Latina yet white passing, doesn't face the same treatment. Colorism contributes to different levels of racism since they're both Latina, but their skin tones give one of them more freedom than the other. The Office of Racial Equity, although focusing on racism on a more systemic level, has the resources to combat casual racism like this, as one of their main focus areas is keeping community wisdom and educating people on anti-racism. Anti-Racism Muslim Abilities in the San Francisco Bay Area, written by Itali Randa, Depti Jones-Ray, and Dunn Kevin Mark, discuss how Muslim Americans have created many different anti-racist mobilities that they can use to combat the Islamophobia they face in San Francisco. This is exactly what the Office of Racial Equity in San Francisco wants to do for their community, fighting back against racism in a safe but effective way. The authors of the article talk about how Muslims living in San Francisco directly face the problem of racism and show how we should respond to it and how exactly to be anti-racist. Muslim Americans living in San Francisco created 3 different forms of anti-racist mobilities to fight back against racism: technological, embodied, and social. Technological mobility strategies refer to the use of technologies, infrastructures, and non-human entities to facilitate physical movement, such as driving instead of taking public transportation. Embodied anti-racist mobilities refer to the various performances, behaviors, and choices of racialized individuals to negotiate and moderate the possible and actual experiences of racism in spaces. Social anti-racist mobility strategies involve practices that are used with the intent to manage tense social relations of racism on both racialized individuals as well as their wider communities. All these methods have greatly helped Muslim Americans and make them feel safer and more comfortable when traveling or being in a public space. These methods are also perfectly aligned with what the Office of Racial Equity wants to do, as 2 of their main focus areas are transportation and mobility, and community wisdom. Thankfully, there are many different organizations that exist in San Francisco to combat anti-racism, such as the Office of Racial Equity in St. Ignatius Parish. These 2 organizations have set many goals and methods to help and liberate people of color, as well as to educate and encourage people to take action against racism. Groups and organizations are a great way to spread awareness and raise concerns about social issues and promote anti-racism. Individuals can't do it by themselves, but with the support of other people, a huge impact could be made. We've seen this happen historically with movements like the Civil Rights Movement, which created a huge impact. The Office of Racial Equity in St. Ignatius Parish pride themselves on promoting anti-racism and creating equality and safe spaces for people of color living in San Francisco. I will go further in discussing exactly what each group does. The Office of Racial Equity envisions a future where San Francisco is a city where people of color can feel at home, no matter the background or where they came from. They hope to address the groups and laws that have negatively impacted people of color, especially Black and Indigenous people of color, and address the issue of anti-Blackness that lies within San Francisco. They also hope to educate people about racial equity and define what it is, and encourage people to join them in creating racial equity. The organization is partnered with the Human Rights Commission in San Francisco as well, and they often hold meetings relating to the group, and they offer multiple resources, like internships and websites to stay educated. They also have a place where you can report discrimination as well, whether it be at your workplace, housing services, school, and much more. The Office of Racial Equity's main focus areas are housing and homelessness, transportation and mobility, workforce and fair employment, education, knowledge, and community wisdom, and much more in San Francisco. The Office of Racial Equity works at an institutional and systemic level. It focuses mainly on holding San Francisco institutions accountable, reconciling race-related damages done in the past, and making sure that the city feels safe for everyone. They don't particularly focus on casual racism, which is quite often in today's world, but they do focus on racism at a larger scale. Systemic racism is what allows casual racism to thrive, and so by dismantling that, we can almost address 2 issues at once. For example, it is very much illegal today to deny someone housing based on the color of their skin, but many have found a way to get around that and deny someone housing for petty reasons. Though, if the person facing such racial discrimination were to report it to the Office of Racial Equity, the office will work with them to address the issue. And the more the issue is addressed, the less people will do it, lowering the risk of casual racism. St. Ignatius Parish, located in San Francisco, is firmly against racism and even has an anti-racism committee, where people of many different cultures and identities can experience a safe community, faithful to the gospel call of Jesus Christ. The parish's anti-racist committee was formed after the murder of George Floyd and the anti-Asian attacks happening in San Francisco in 2020. The parish has multiple goals, such as creating a diverse community and creating deeper, meaningful relationships between different groups. The parish wants people to share their cultures, whether with each other or within the context of the Bible. and create a place where everyone can feel comfortable and understand each other in San Francisco. They would also like to teach and educate about the Bible and Jesus outside their own parish, hoping to engage with other Catholic communities and even increase their collaboration with the University of San Francisco. They welcome everyone to join their parish, religious or not. St. Ignatius Parish's Anti-Racism Committee in San Francisco aims to educate people on racism and anti-racism utilizing 4 steps of the pastoral cycle: experience, reflection, learning, and action. The parish, in connection to racism today, references Jesus and his former beliefs. Jesus, although he was all for radical inclusion, he treated those who weren't Jewish with hostility. However, the Syrophoenician woman, a significant figure in the New Testament, helped him realize that his ministry was meant for everyone and that he needed to let go of the beliefs he had which stemmed from his own cultural background. The parish discusses racism on an individual, systemic, and cultural scale, and they even reference Ibram X. Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, in their article of Strategic Directions when discussing non-racism and anti-racism, using him as an example for educating people on the topic in San Francisco. I want my audience to learn how to be anti-racist, educate themselves, and stand up for each other, so we can all get rid of the negativity spread by those who are racist and outnumber them. Like the Office of Racial Equity in St. Ignatius Parish in San Francisco, I want us to redefine our definitions and perceptions of racism and anti-racism, and learn how to differentiate being not racist and anti-racist. Despite it being 2025, racism is still very much alive and well. Racism will always be a big part of our world, as it's been around for such a long time that it's done irreparable damage. But, like Kendi said, if we learn how to be anti-racist, educate ourselves, and stand up for each other, we can get rid of negativity spread by those who are racist and outnumber them. When you are not racist, you're still allowing for discriminatory laws and practices to slide and affect people of color. But when you're anti-racist, you're doing something about the issue and working towards dismantling our racist system and social rules.